Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Martial Universe Season 6 based on novel. So let's start. Yang Sen's figure transformed into a black shadow and directly charged into the distorted space. Waves after waves of mighty Yuan power erupted at that instant and actually forcefully scattered the wild and violent spatial ripple. Pluto Hand Yang Senator, I never expected that even this person has actually came to this northwestern region to enter the ancient secret trove. Liu Bai looked at the figure that was the first to rush forward and spoke with a soft laughter. This fellow is a little troublesome. Standing beside Liu Bai, Mu Hongling looked at Yang Sen's back with her peach blossom eyes and said, "Ha ha, most people who can reach this place are troublesome." Liu Bai laughed. However, the real shocker is how fast that other guy has improved. When I met him for the first time, any random Nirvana stage expert can reduce him into a miserable state. However, I never expected that within a few short months, he is actually already able to fight with the four overlords of the northwestern region. Mu Hongling suddenly turned her pretty eyes before she glanced at Lin Dong a short distance away. Lin Dong is not a simple person. It is likely that he will be an incredible dark horse in the 100 Empire War half a year later. Liu Bai slowly said. Oh? Mu Hongling lifted her pretty eyebrows. She spoke in a non-committal manner. Although I do not doubt his growth potential, it is not as though you do not know what kind of terrifying characters will appear in the 100 Empire War. Those abnormal individuals from the super empires had firmly held onto the top positions since the 100 Empire War started. It is quite a difficult thing for an ordinary person to shake them, even if one obtains some inheritance and have some lucky encounter. Although it is difficult, something like that has occurred before. Who knows, maybe an exception will appear again this time around. I think that it might be very interesting when that time comes. The dignity of your super empires have not been challenged for many years. Liu Bai laughed. Hopefully. Mu Hongling stretched her waist and her curves were exposed. Her pretty eyes had gathered onto the figure in the distance for some unknown reason. It was extremely difficult to challenging a super empire. Could this fellow really do it? We should leave. Once we barge through this distorted space, we should be able to reach the remains of the four great mysterious sects. Liu Bai waved his hand. After which, his figure moved, he took charge, and rushed forward and directly shot into the distorted space. Mu Hongling and the others closely followed behind him. Swoosh swoosh. Seeing that Yang Sen, Liu Bai and the others have moved, those crowds that were eyeing the four great mysterious sects' remains, were finally unable to endure any longer. Numerous figures rushed out. Finally, they jumped into the distorted space. However, many people seemed to have underestimated the wild and violent spatial strength that existed in this distorted space. Therefore, when these people charge in one after another, some unlucky fellows were struck by the spatial crack line. Finally, a muffled boom sound was emitted and they were torn apart, forming a rain of blood. A bloody scent spread apart. The suddenly bloody scent also immediately stirred a panic. Some people had finally understood that this distorted space surrounding the four great mysterious sect remains was not as simple as they had imagined. Lin Dong looked at the blood fog that was drifting over from the distorted space. He knitted his brows slightly. These fellows had really been tempted by the four great mysterious sect remains, until they had lost their minds. Let's go. This kind of matter. Lin Dong did not have the strength nor intention to be bothered about it. He nodded towards Little Flame. Immediately, they both of them rushed out at the same time, and shot straight into the distorted space. Crash! After the two of them charged into the distorted space, they were able to sense the incomparably wild and violent spatial strength around. Numerous spatial crack lines would occasionally spread apart, appearing just like the sharpest blade. Should one accidentally touch it, even their nirvana golden body would be directly torn apart. Vast and might Yuan power covered Lin Dong and Little Flame. At the same time, Lin Dong's mental energy also swept apart. Each time a spatial crack line appeared in the surrounding space, Lin Dong would be the first to sense it and lead Little Flame to dodge it. Although this kind of distorted space was dangerous, an expert of Lin Dong level would not easily end up facing a fatal danger as long as he was careful. Hence, with this success and speed, the remains of the four great mysterious sects hidden deep within the distorted space also began to gradually appear within the sight of Lin Dong's group. That place seemed to be an extremely ancient and enormous field. Nothing on the field appeared to be particularly special. However, the majestic aura that it emitted caused one to feel a little breathless. That is, Lin Dong's eyes narrowed as he looked at the middle of the field. After which, he discovered that there was actually four tightly shut ancient bronze doors quietly standing at that spot, appearing as though they had lasted forever, since the ancient times. Swoosh! Some of the more powerful experts had already passed through the distorted space and landed on the large ancient field. Lin Dong and Little Flame also followed closely behind. They slowly landed on this large field. After which, they swept their gazes around. This ancient field looked as though it was completely casted from a large rock, and there was not the slightest crack line on it. The field was as smooth as a mirror, as though it had been randomly carved by someone. Is this the remains of the four great mysterious sects? Those figures who had landed in this field carried a pair of fiery hot eyes, as they slowly swept over this place. Deep within their eyes was a surging greedy expression. After experiencing so many obstacles, they had finally reached the remains of the four great mysterious sects. The ancient field did not have any overly unique things. The only special objects were the four ancient bronze doors. Hence, after many gazes swept once around, all of them gathered on these doors. From the looks of it, it appeared as though these four bronze doors were the key to the inheritance of the four great mysterious sects. Swoosh! Numerous gazes flowed over the bronze doors. A moment later, a person was finally unable to endure any longer. He stepped forward. After which, wild Yuan power surged as he unleashed a powerful martial art. His fist smashed onto a bronze door. A low and deep sound spread over the field as a circular ripple spread apart. It directly scattered the dust that had been lying on this field for countless number of years. Grug? However, just after that ripple spread, the expression of the expert who had unleashed this attack immediately paled. After which, he spat out a mouthful of fresh blood. His body directly shot backwards in front of numerous stunned eyes. It finally shot out of the field and was sent into the distorted space. His waist was split into two by a spatial stream that was spreading apart. Immediately, a sharp screech sounded. This scene immediately caused the experts on the field to become quiet. Some of those who were originally planning on attacking together and blasting apart these bronze doors immediately stopped with faces covered in cold sweat. It seemed that these bronze doors cannot be broken with brute force. The inheritance of the four great mysterious sects should be behind these four large bronze doors. Lin Dong's gaze swept over those bronze doors. An expression of deep thought flashed across his eyes. In other words, it meant that he must open the large bronze doors in order to obtain the inheritance. Everyone on the field engaged in private conversations. They seemed to be discussing about how to break the door. Liu Bai's group, on the other hand, was staring at these large bronze doors with strange expressions. Their eyes did not contain the doubt and loss like those of the others. Everyone, do you really wish to know how to open these large bronze doors? A voice suddenly spoke faintly while everyone was at a loss. Immediately, all the eyes turned towards him. Lin Dong's gaze also looked over. His eyes were slightly cold. This was because the person who had spoke was Lin Langtian. It is not possible to use brute force to break these large bronze doors. This is because one must have a key in order to open them. Lin Langtian placed both of his hands behind him. His gaze carried some dark chillness, as it was slowly thrown towards Lin Dong a short distance away. The keys to open them are the 4 ancient secret keys. Uproar. Lin Langtian's words immediately stirred a commotion on this field. After which, numerous gazes instantly became filled with a heated greed as they paused on Lin Dong. Everyone present clearly knew that Lin Dong possessed an ancient secret key. Ha ha, this fellow likely possessed more than one ancient secret key in his hands. He had defeated Shakuan, and it is likely that the ancient secret key in the latter's hands should now be with him. Lin Langtian smiled densely. After which, his eyes looked towards Liu Bai, Tianjin and the other 2 individuals amongst the 4 great overlords. He said, "Let's join hands and snatch the ancient secret keys from him. What do you say?" Tianjin's expression immediately turned dark and dense when he heard this. He immediately stared at Lin Dong with malicious intent. The smile on his face was a little ferocious. Ancient secret key. Liu Bai smiled faintly. He clenched his hand and an ancient key appeared on it. He lazily said, "We have coincidentally met the prehistoric empire along the way, and took their ancient secret key in passing. Looks like I don't need it either." The black-robed Yang Sen glanced at Lin Dong. After which, he extended his long hand. There was actually also an ancient secret key on his fingers. Clearly, this should be the one that belonged to the Death Valley Empire. It seemed that these fellows had also guessed something. Therefore, they took action and snatched the ancient secret key after the ancient treasure trove was opened. Those like the Devil Cliff Empire and the Prehistoric Empire had completely wasted their effort to bitterly search for the ancient secret key. Lin Langtian's eyes were a little dark and cold as he glanced at Liu Bai and Yang Senator. It is unexpected that these 2 fellows had actually done something like this. Lin Dong, you have offended quite a number of people. I have already said that you will regret it sooner or later. Tianjin had a shady face as he slowly stepped forward. After which, his eyes stared at Lin Dong with some hostility. He extended his hand over the ancient secret key. Shuffle shuffle. The man with an axe behind him and the beast robe man also carried some chilling aura, as they slowly stepped forward from behind Tianjin. Finally, they stood beside Tianjin. Their eyes stared at Lin Dong in an indifferent manner. It seemed that they also wanted the ancient secret key in Lin Dong's hands. Lin Dong, you should obediently hand them over if you do not wish to die here. A chilly expression surfaced on Lin Langtian's face. He softly said, "No matter what tactics you have, you will definitely die in the face of this lineup." The atmosphere on the large field had stiffened at this moment. Numerous gazes that contained various emotion gathered towards Lin Dong. Greed, along with an extremely rich fear, was present in their eyes. This Lin Dong had actually forced 3 great overlords to attack him. Some gazes swept over Tianjin's 3-men group. Although they were uncertain about Lin Langtian's strength, Fierce Wolf Tianjin, Mountain Shattering Axe Jiang Shan, and Beast Fist Mu Shou were quite famous within this northwestern region. There might be some people present who knew that Lin Dong had exchanged blows with Tianjin back at the Pill Grounds. However, currently, there were 3 heavyweight experts, including Tianjin, stepping forward. It was likely that no one within the northwestern region would not feel fear in the face of such a lineup. Liu Bai, Yang Sen and the others looked at this scene with a peculiar expression in their eyes. Although they did not intend to add insult to injury, they did not intend to intervene and lend a hand either. They were truly a little curious about Lin Dong in their hearts, and really wanted to know just how far Lin Dong could endure in the face of this lineup, which even they did not dare to slight. A smile of having fulfilled his evil scheme flashed across Lin Langtian's face when he saw this scene. Although Liu Bai and Yang Sen ultimately did not intervene, this current lineup was likely sufficient to finish Lin Dong off. Lin Dong, you possess 2 ancient secret keys in your hands. As long as you are willing to part with one of them, I will not make things difficult for you. That beast-robed man with eyes as sharp as wild beasts stared at Lin Dong and slowly said. Lin Dong's eyes paused on this person's body. By being in possession of such a mighty demeanor, it was likely that he could not be anyone other than one of the 4 great overlords, Beast Fist Mu Shou. The development of the situation, to such an extent, had somewhat exceeded Lin Dong's expectations. Before this, he did not expect that this ancient secret keys were actually the critical objects used to open these 4 great mysterious sex inheritance, on top of being used to open this ancient treasure trove. There were only a total of 4 secret keys. Currently, he held 2 of them in his hands. Looking from a certain point of view, being stared at by these experts with fiery eyes was not an incredible outcome. After all, everyone here wanted to obtain the inheritance. Moreover, amongst the owners of the 4 keys, Liu Bai and Yang Sen could be considered truly troublesome individuals. In other words, Mu Shou and the others would naturally choose the weakest one to go after. Clearly, in their eyes, Lin Dong's threat far exceeded Liu Bai's group. 2 ancient secret keys. Lin Dong curled his lips. He glanced at the 2 tightly shut bronze door and his eyes narrowed. In the face of this situation, even if he was to really hand it over, he would likely be only to get one of those to dispel such thoughts. The remaining individuals would definitely snatch the last remaining secret key in his hand unwillingly. The current Lin Dong seemed to have 2 choices. One was to hand over a secret key, and get one of Tianjin's 4 men group to withdraw, after which he would fight with the other 3 individuals. The second was to not hand even a single key over, and end up with an intense fight with the 4 individuals. However, these 2 results did not appear to have any difference in Lin Dong's eyes. Lin Dong gently clenched his hand. He immediately raised his head and smilingly said, "There is coincidentally 2 of us here. Therefore we are able to use both of these ancient secret keys." Lin Dong's words immediately stirred a low uproar within this field. The eyes of some people involuntarily felt shocked. The meaning of Lin Dong's words was that he wanted to directly fight head-on with Tianjin and the 3 others. Was this fellow really unaware of his limits, or did he really possess such a shocking ability? Mu Shou's eyes had become a little darker because of Lin Dong's words. A ferocious expression flashed across his face as he slowly said, "You don't know what's good for you. Ha ha, Mu Shou, you need not waste your breath with him. This fellow is extremely arrogant. He thinks that he can ride on our heads and shit over it just because he has some ability. If this kind of person is not taught a lesson, it is likely that we will be mocked by others." Tianjin spoke with a dense smile. Lin Dong's eyes were indifferent as he glanced at Tianjin. He completely ignored him. With a flick of his finger, an ancient secret key shot abruptly towards little flame behind him. "Take it. If you manage to get the opportunity later, open one of the large bronze doors and enter it. Take the inheritance within it." Ha, such a treasure must of course be given to one's brother. How can those fellows get to enjoy it? Little Flame was slightly stunned when he heard Lin Dong's words. He quietly nodded his hand and kept the secret key properly. His other hand slowly held the dark black metal rod. A cold glint vaguely surged within his eyes. Lin Dong twisted his neck and immediately exhaled a breath of air. He knew that the subsequent battle would likely be the most intense one that he would experience ever since he entered the ancient battlefield. "You 3, since this person does not accept our kind offer, let us all attack." We will decide just who the ancient secret keys will belong to after snatching them. What do you say? Lin Langtian laughed. Lin Dong, there should be a limit to greed. Otherwise, you will only return empty-handed despite all your effort. The man who was carrying a large axe behind him looked at Lin Dong with icy cold eyes, as he spoke with a deep voice. Sorry, but these are things that I have exchanged with my life. It won't be so easy to take them away. Lin Dong's voice was completely still without ripple, appearing just like a deep well. He did not withdraw even a little in the face of that powerful lineup. He had given a lot in order to obtain these ancient secret keys. Now, these fellows had actually wanted to use their force to pressure him to hand the secret keys over. Given Lin Dong's character, he would definitely not accept it. Since this is the case, we can only defeat you and take them ourselves. The man with a large axe behind him slowly grabbed the huge axe on his back. After which, the axe shook and a sharp, overbearing wind swept over the ground, forming a deep scar in the process. Bang! When this sharp, overbearing aura swept out from Jiang Shan's body, Tianjin, Mu Shou and Lin Langtian, by the side also took a step forward. 3 surging aura spread. That kind of great pressure swept towards Lin Dong in an overwhelming manner. Tianjin, Mu Shou and Jiang Shan were all experts, who possessed the qualification to attempt the third nirvana tribulation. They were undoubtedly the peak existences within this northwestern region. Lin Langtian was also quite fierce. Although he was only at the 1 yuan nirvana stage, he similarly possessed the ability to fight with a 2 yuan nirvana stage expert. Now that the 4 of them had attacked together, the pressure created caused quite a number of people present to change their expressions. They hurriedly withdrew their bodies as they did so. Uproar. The majestic pressure spread, as though it was a real substance, and covered this wide field. Even Lin Dong's expression had turned into an extremely solemn one under such pressure. Clang! The metal rod in the hands of Little Flame behind slammed heavily onto the ground. A tiger roar was vaguely emitted. Numerous black glow swept out continuously from his body. Finally, some black light swept out from within his body and agglomerated into an enormous black-colored light tiger on its surface. The light tiger continued to roar and danced. A fierce aura slowly permeated it. Kill! A low and deep ferocious voice was emitted from Little Flame's throat. Just when Little Flame was about to charge forward, Lin Dong extended his hand and stopped him. The fierceness in Little Flame's eyes immediately diminished a little when Lin Dong extended his hand. Although he did not understand why Lin Dong was stopping him, his forward-moving body still came to a stop. I have said that the ancient secret keys are things that I have fought tooth and nail to obtain. It will likely not be as simple as you imagine to get me to hand them over. Lin Dong lowered his eyes. His deep voice vaguely had a bone-chilling coldness surging within it. Does the current you possess the qualification to say these words? Tianjin laughed. 3 of the 4 overlords of the northwestern region attacking at the same time. With such a lineup, it was an extremely simple matter to destroy Lin Dong. Yet, Lin Dong actually spoke such words to them. From the way he saw it, this was an incredibly laughable matter. Humph! Jiang Shan and Mu Shou behind Tianjin let out a cold snort, appearing as though they agreed with the latter's words. Yuan power crazily surged and the pressure was greatly strengthened. They seemed to be intending on using their merged aura to deter Lin Dong. Lin Langtian crossed his hands over his chest. His eyes were playfully staring at Lin Dong. He really wanted to see just how Lin Dong was going to escape out of this situation. Numerous gazes on the field, including Liu Bai's group, were gathered on Lin Dong. Clearly, they also wanted to know just what could Lin Dong really on in the face of such a lineup. Clang! Lin Dong clenched his hand in the face of the many gazes. An ancient halberd appeared in his hand. It was the ancient heavenly scales halberd. The heavenly crocodile bone spear also flashed and appeared on Lin Dong's other hands after the ancient heavenly scales halberd appeared. It was inserted heavily into the ground in front of him. Kai Kai. Lin Dong's expression was icy cold. His hand slammed heavily onto the ancient heavenly scales halberd. After which, a dark golden-colored blood suddenly shot out. The ancient heavenly scales halberd immediately dimmed after this blood shot out. It was as though it had lost all of its spirit. Lin Dong flipped his hand after removing this blood that was hidden within the ancient heavenly scales halberd. A cluster of grayish-black ball of blood once again appeared. It was the blood of the demon dragon dog that Lin Dong had obtained from the 8th-level sect earlier. From this manner of Lin Dong, it was obvious that he was planning to use these two ancient bloodline to summon the ancient heavenly crocodile's soul from within the heavenly crocodile bone spear. Faced with Tianjin and the 3 other troublesome opponent, it seemed that Lin Dong was planning to use his trump card. 2 ancient bloodline flowed around Lin Dong's palm. Meanwhile, there were some wild and violent ripples being vaguely emitted continuously. Spiritual sacrifice. Lin Dong's eyes were bone-chilling cold as he suddenly let out a loud cry. 2 ancient bloodline immediately shot out from his hand and directly landed on the heavenly crocodile bone spear. Sizzle sizzle. Wild and violent strength swiftly merged into the heavenly crocodile bone spear after the 2 ancient blood adhered onto the dense white spear body of the heavenly crocodile bone spear. Bright red lines vaguely appeared, looking just like blood vessels. Rumble. Waves after waves of humming sound was emitted from the heavenly crocodile bone spear at this moment. Those bright red lines also became increasingly obvious. From the looks of it, it seemed that there was something terrifying that was just about to break free of the spear and shoot out. This sudden action of Lin Dong had clearly exceeded everyone's expectations. Even Liu Bai and Yang Sen were a little surprised when they saw this sight. It was likely that they were very curious about what Lin Dong was planning to do. This brat is really a little strange. Don't give him time. Attack. Tianjin's expression was dark and cold as he watched this scene. Although he was unaware of what Lin Dong was planning to do, he still vaguely felt a little uneasy. He immediately let out a deep cry and his body took the lead to rush forward. His fist violently smashed towards Lin Dong. Clang! A strong figure flashed and appeared just as the wild and violent Yuan force storm was still around 10 feet from Lin Dong. At the same time, the black-colored metal rod carried a fierce pressure and heavily blasted apart that Yuan power wild wind. U3. This brat is no ordinary individual. If we still continue to drag our feet, it is likely that we will be the ones who will end up regretting it. A chillness flashed across Tianjin's face as he cried out sharply, after seeing the appearance of Little Flame, who had a face filled with a fierce violent aura. Ha ha, if you are really interested in the inheritance of the 4 great mysterious sects, you should first take care of Lin Dong. Lin Langtian smiled faintly towards Mu Shou and Jiang Shan. Amongst the 4 of them, he was the one with the deepest understanding of Lin Dong. Back then, this humble branch family person was a weakling in his eyes. However, he had chased him step by step during these short few years and had even surpassed him. Regardless of how Lin Langtian laughed coldly and showed disdain, he had no choice but to admit that this opponent of his was incomparably troublesome and difficult to deal with. Mu Shou's and Jiang Shan's eyes glanced indifferently at Lin Langtian. Although the 4 of them might be cooperating, this alliance was incredibly fragile. All of them understood that after they finished Lin Dong off, they would up attempting to kill each other. Of course, the most important thing now was indeed to finish Lin Dong off. Bang! The 3 of them moved their bodies and rushed out almost at the same time. Wild and violent yuan power swept apart in the mid-air. Mountain-breaking blade. Wild lion fist. 8 desolated emperor hand. The three of them clearly did not have the intention to drag the fight on. Hence, all of them unleashed quite a powerful martial arts the moment they attacked. Immediately, 3 unusually fierce martial arts attack whistled out from the hands of the three of them. After which, they violently smashed towards Little Flame, who was in front of Lin Dong. Heaven Devil God transformation, Tiger Roar transformation. A solemnness surged in Little Flame's eyes as he faced the sharp attack unleashed by Lin Lang Tian's 3-men group. His strong body trembled slightly. After which, majestic black-colored energy surged out like floodwater from within his body before forming a large black-colored light tiger outside his body. Roar! The light tiger roared towards the sky. Immediately, Little Flame took a stride forward. His straightforward punch was struck forward in a plain manner. The fierce violent aura agglomerated within his body had appeared to transform into something substance-like and rushed forward together with the light tiger outside of his body. Bang! The enormous black-colored light tiger roared towards the sky. It directly adopted an extremely wild stance and collided with the 3 majestic attacks in front of many gazes. The wild and violent energy ripple swept apart from the point where the wildness interacted. Little Flame's body also trembled intensely. A gentle breeze spread onto his body as a low and deep explosion was repeatedly emitted from the point of contact. Fortunately, his body was extremely strong. His defense was also shockingly powerful. Hence, he was actually able to forcefully endure this wild and violent wind. Although Little Flame had barely managed to endure, he was also shaken until he took many steps back. His feet rubbed on the ground, forming numerous deep scars on it. The blood within his body also churned intensely. Although Little Flame possessed the bloodline of the Heavenly Devil Tiger tribe, there was after all some gap between his strength and that of Tianjin's group. Moreover, he was fighting 1 against 3. That result was naturally him feeling some strain. Humph, I want to see just how many times can you block us. Tianjin emitted a dense smile. Without giving Little Flame even the slightest time to rest, he took a stride forward and his body rushed out once again. Lin Langtian and the 2 others quickly followed from behind. That sharp attacking martial arts covered Little Flame from all directions, appearing as though it was a storm. Roar! A low and deep tiger roar was emitted from Little Flame's throat. Black light seemed to have agglomerated on his body to form a light armor. The metal rod in his hand also danced like a windmill. Countless number of rod shadows appeared. He did not even shrink back a little in the face of the combined attacks of Tianjin and the 3 others. He knew that Lin Dong needed some time if he wanted to summon the ancient heavenly crocodile's soul. Boom 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 boom. The wild and violent attack unfolded in the wide field. Little Flame's body was also repeatedly being struck by the powerful attacks. Under such an attack, he began to show signs of being injured. In fact, blood traces began to seeping out from his body despite his strength. However, even though Little Flame was barely able to block their attacks, the eyes of Little Flame was also becoming increasingly crimson in color. He was showing signs of a wild beast turning crazy. Rumble. The fiercely wild yuan power exploded over Little Flame's chest, and that frightening force caused even Little Flame's strong body to tremble slightly. A trace of blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. Little Flame's large hand randomly rubbed away the trace of blood. He flipped his hand and rubbed it over his face. After which, he actually parted his mouth and smiled towards Lin Langtian and the 3 others. A hostility that would cause one's bone to feel chilled filled that smile. Just as Little Flame was prepared to step forward once again with a face filled with hostility, a hand was suddenly extended from behind him. The hand landed on his shoulder and patted it gently. Lin Dong's voice was also emitted, "Leave it to me." Little Flame was slightly stunned. A joy was immediately revealed in his eyes. He turned his head around and coincidentally saw the grin on Lin Dong's face. The heavenly crocodile bone spear in front of the latter had already completely turned from a densely white color to a bright red one. Wisp of liquid blood-like glow was spreading continuously from the body of the spear. Has it been completed? Little Flame also sighed in relief when he heard the ancient roar that was being emitted from the heavenly crocodile bone spear. Lin Dong, are you still trying to be stubborn at this moment? Obediently hand over the ancient secret key, and we might still spare your life. Tianjin's eyes shrunk as he glanced at the heavenly crocodile bone spear in front of Lin Dong, which had become unusually red in color. After which, he let out a cold laughter as he cried. All of you have enjoyed attacking, right? Lin Dong glanced at some of the injuries on Little Flame's body. However, he simply smiled. This smile did not contain the slightest warmth. Instead, it was filled with an endless chillness and killing intent. Since you have enjoyed your turn, it shall be my turn now. Lin Dong's hand slowly grabbed the bright red heavenly crocodile bone spear in front of him. After which, he violently slammed it onto the ground. Bang! A wild and violent ripple that was visible to the naked eye spread apart from under the spot where the spear landed. There was vaguely an ancient roar spreading apart, causing one's heart to flutter. This ripple, Liu Bai and Yang Sen expressions changed slightly upon sensing this ripple. Immediately, their expressions were a little grave as they stared at the heavenly crocodile bone spear in Lin Dong's hands. Kill him. The expressions of Tianjin and the three others also changed. That uneasiness within their hearts suddenly swelled. Immediately, they let out a cry in unison without any prior agreement. The four of them charged out with lightning speed, as their wild and violent attacks targeted Lin Dong from all directions. Ancient heavenly crocodile, appear. Lin Dong's eyes were indifferent as he glanced at the four figures rushing over. His eyes slowly turned towards the bright red heavenly crocodile bone spear in his hands as he muttered. Bang! Bright red light pillar was suddenly spat out from the heavenly crocodile bone spear like an erupting volcano. Within a short instance, it had spread over this large field. This activity immediately attracted everyone's gazes. Numerous shocked eyes shot towards the sky, which had turned blood red in color. Roar! The blood light permeated the place before swiftly gathering. A moment later, an unusually large figure started to become vaguely visible under that blood pillar. A low and deep roar sounded, appearing as though it had originated from ancient times. A frightening ripple descended from the sky. When this ripple had descended from the sky, Lin Langqian and the three others, who were originally rushing over, suddenly stiffened their bodies as though they had been struck by lightning. Their eyes contained a disbelief as they stared at the sky. That ripple could be comparable to that of a 3-yuan nirvana stage expert. This fellow. Liu Bai and Yang Sen exhaled a gentle breath at this moment. Even they could feel a fatal danger from that enormous figure. No one had expected that Lin Dong was actually still in possession of such a powerful trump card in his hands. A low and primordial roar rang out from the bloody light that covered the sky, as the titanic silhouette started to move. As the bloody light faded, an enormous figure appeared before everyone's eyes. Hiss! When the enormous figure within the bloody light was reflected in everyone's eyes, a series of gasps echoed across the area. That figure was 100 feet large blood-colored giant crocodile. Its entire body was covered with a bloody light. A thick layer of blood armor was covering its gigantic body. Its uneven surface contained some thorns that were extended outwards. At a first glance, it was as though the thick armor was a weapon used for massacre. There was deep dark black-colored horn on the head of the large blood-colored crocodile, and an unusual blood light was vaguely flowing over it. It was as though there was a frighteningly sharpness that could penetrate through the world suddenly spreading from it. This ancient giant crocodile, that seemed to have emerged from the prehistoric era, appeared within the blood light. It overlooked everyone on the field from its high position. Its large bloody eyes were emitting a ferocious glint. This was the soul of the ancient heavenly crocodile. By borrowing the strength from two ancient bloodlines, Lin Dong had finally summoned it from within the heavenly crocodile bone spear. What is this thing? The bodies of Tianjin and the three others had basically froze, as they were completely stunned out of their minds. Their eyes contained an incomparable amount of shock as they witnessed this scene. The enormous being from within the blood light had directly caused the blood within their blood vessels to show signs of solidifying. A paleness had surged onto the expressions of the four of them at this moment. They could sense an extremely dangerous ripple from within that enormous blood figure. That ripple was far stronger than them. How is this possible? Lin Langtian inhaled a deep breath of air. He tried his best to suppress his crazy beating heart. Meanwhile, his face was incomparably gloomy. Lin Dong's move had essentially destroyed all of his plans. Although he had yet to exchange blows with this enormous being, it was possible to tell from the ripples that were emitted that the four of them would have difficulty defeating it even if they joined forces. Originally, he thought that he could use the ancient secret key as a reason to borrow the strength the others. With the strength of the four of them, it was sufficient to completely finish off Lin Dong in this ancient treasure trove. However, this unexpected change had undoubtedly completely wrecked his plans. Gulp. Standing beside him, Tianjin, Mo Shou and Jiang Shan also swallowed a mouthful of saliva. They stared at the enormous being within the blood light, and immediately felt their scalps turn numb. Only at this moment did they completely understand why Lin Dong did not reveal the slightest fear, even when facing against their combined attacks. This fellow actually had such a frightening trump card. Is that the ancient heavenly crocodile? Liu Bai and Yang Sen's eyes had similarly gathered onto that enormous figure. However, it appears that the both of them possessed quite a good eyesight. They finally muttered those words after staring at that figure for a moment. How is it possible that this Lin Dong has summoned an ancient heavenly crocodile? It is rumored that such a fierce demonic beast could be considered as a powerful existence even in the ancient times. An expert behind Liu Bai uttered with a tone that contained some shock. It is not a genuine ancient heavenly crocodile. Rather, it is a remnant ancient heavenly crocodile's soul. Liu Bai shook his head and replied, if it was a real heavenly crocodile, there would no longer be a need for him to participate in the 100 Empire War. Once he summons this creature, no one would dare to fight with him. Even those abnormal beings from the super empires would likely change their expressions once this monster appears. However, even if it was only the soul of the heavenly crocodile, it is also quite powerful. I wonder just where did this fellow obtain it from? Mu Hongling curled her red lips. Although she did not appear to lose herself like the others on the surface, the rise and fall of her voluminous chests allowed others to understand the shock in her heart. Ha ha! I have already said that Lin Dong is not a simple person. Tianjin and the others think that they can defeat him with numbers. However, they did not expect that this metal plate is much harder than they imagined. At the end, they could only hurt their own legs. Liu Bai laughed. Mu Hongling nodded slightly. Her peach blossom-like eyes watched the man in the field holding a blood-colored long spear. This fellow might only be from a low-rank empire, but the things that he did were those that even these experts from the high-rank empire were unable to do. Once you have recovered from your shock, you can come and try this thing. Lin Dong gently twisted his hand in the face of the entire place, inhaling a cold breath of air. His eyes teasingly watched the pale white expression of Lin Langtian's group. A thought passed through his heart, without him wasting any breath. The heavenly crocodile soul within the blood light extended a claw that was filled with blood-colored scales and ruthlessly struck it towards Tianjin's group. Swoosh! The blood-colored claw transformed into a bloody ray of light. It appeared to have torn apart the sky. A blood-colored scar would be formed in the air along the path which it tore through. The swiftness of the heavenly crocodile's soul was unimaginable. Even someone as strong as Tianjin could only see a ray of light flashing past their eyes. Immediately, a dangerous feeling was suddenly extended as all the pores on his body stood up. Bang! Surging yuan power rushed out from the bodies of all four of them without additional thoughts. They did not dare to underestimate the situation in the face of such a rich sense of danger. Bright golden light surged out from within the bodies of the four individuals when the yuan power splurted out. Tianjin, Mu Shou and Jian Shan directly activated their strongest golden body barrier. This solid-like golden body barrier covered the three of them. Golden glow overflowed from it, giving it an extremely tough appearance. Lin Langtian was a 1 yuan nirvana stage expert, and he was still unable to reach the level of gathering the energy from the nirvana golden body on the surface of his skin and forming a golden barrier. However, he had also maneuvered his yuan power to its limit. His entire body was bright gold in color, appearing extremely dazzling. While the four of them were wildly maneuvering their strength, the claw from the heavenly crocodile's soul suddenly smashed downwards. After which, it mercilessly smashed onto the bright golden glow in front of the eyes of many. Clang! A clear bell-like noise resounded over the field. Soon after, countless incomparably fierce explosion occurred. Golden glow shot in all directions. That seemingly powerful golden body barrier had only lasted for a couple of breaths in the face of the smashing blood-colored claw from the heavenly crocodile's soul. After which, it blasted apart, without any obstruction, in front of the many stunned gazes and the frightened eyes of Tianjin's group. Boom boom. Golden light shot all over the place and the four figures miserable flew outwards. Their bodies directly rubbed over the field, forming four glaring scars over it. Finally, they managed to stabilize their bodies forcefully after it reached the area near the edge of the field. Grug! However, the force within their bodies erupted just when all of them stabilized themselves. For mouthful of fresh blood was spat out. Their originally pale face had become even paler. The eyes of everyone on the field observed Tianjin's group miserably spitting blood. All of them involuntarily became silent. Some of their faces even twitched. Although they had already guessed this ending when the soul of the heavenly crocodile had appeared, they realized that they were unable to remain as calm as they had imagined when such an occurrence really appeared in front of them. That was three top experts, who had the qualification to attempt the third nirvana tribulation. If people like Tianjin were given sufficient time, it was likely that they could even advance into that nirvana ranking and become an expert whom others looked up to. However, they were actually forced by Lin Dong into such a miserable state despite having joined forces. The eyes of Tianjin's group were filled with shock as they landed on the ground. They raised their heads and looked at Lin Dong a shock distance away. A faint horror was flashing in their eyes. "I will not kill all of you. You can get lost by yourself." Lin Dong's eyes were bone-chillingly cold as they swept over Tianjin and the two others. His tone was indifferent. "Lin Dong, I am acquainted with the people from the Great Gan Empire. I don't believe that you dare to touch me." Green and white color interlaced over Tianjin's face as he cried out with fury. "Great Gan Empire? That is a super empire. This Tianjin is actually related to them." Tianjin's voice had just sounded out, when some exclamations sounded from the surrounding crowd. "I do not wish to repeat myself again." Lin Dong's eyes became chilly. A thought passed through his heart, and the heavenly crocodile's soles once again extended its blood-colored claw. In an instant, a dense killing intent spread from it. You? Tianjin's expression finally began to change, as he sensed the killing intent that came spreading from within Lin Dong's body. He knew that if he continued to contradict Lin Dong, it was likely that the latter would really mercilessly give him a killing blow. Lin Dong, nothing in this world remains constant. Today, I shall admit my loss here. I will seek recompense for this grudge in the future. Compared to Tianjin, Mu Shou and Jiang Shan were extremely straightforward and tactful. The situation in front of them had already changed. If they were to continue remaining in this place, it was likely that they would not be able to defeat the ancient heavenly crocodile that Lin Dong had summoned even if they were to join forces. In that case, it was best for them to directly leave. Hence, the two of them got up, threw these words to Lin Dong before turning around and jolting out of the field. Consider yourself vicious. You should just wait. Tianjin's expression was a little green after seeing Mo Shou and Jiang Shan leaving. The glint in his eyes changed for a moment before he finally clenched his teeth unwillingly and charged out from the field. Everyone looked at this scene where Lin Dong's words had chased away the three great overlords. All of them were quietly speechless. This Lin Dong was indeed not a person that one should easily offend. Humph, Lin Dong, remember, it is not over between us. At this moment, Lin Langtian also stood up with an ugly expression. Tianjin and the two others were forced to leave. There was little that he could accomplish alone. It seemed that he could only withdraw first. However, just when he was preparing to withdraw, an icy cold smile was slowly lifted on Lin Dong's face. He raised his head and observed Lin Langtian. His soft voice contained a dense killing intent as it quietly spread over this field. They can leave but you cannot. This video will end here.